Let's take a moment to reflect. How do you react? Like your mother? How does she react? Like her mother? It's amazing how legacy is formed by what we see and hear. Imagine the consequences of the legacy we are building through our words and actions for the future generations. This week, Women to Women marks the beginning of the 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children. Now ask yourself, what kind of legacy will you leave? One of strength or destruction? Find out this Friday at 3 p.m. We are women. We are brave, strong, capable, unique. We are Women to Women.
Good afternoon, South Africa. Today is a very special day for all women in South Africa. Today we start our 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, feminicide. And of course, we extend that to the protection of kids and men alike who are going through abuse. We have come about this show because when we were preparing for our show of Women's Day, we were looking for role models, those who have left us a legacy so that we could boldly speak of them. And we found a few. We are very happy to have very good role models. However, we realized that most of them are old or have passed. The women of 1956, they are no more. They left us a legacy. But to which extent are we still fighting for our rights? So the word legacy came to us very strong, and this is why we call this program Your Legacy. Because it came also the consciousness that for one to build a legacy, to leave to the next generation and generations to come, we're talking about women of 1956, it has to start with small actions. You don't build a legacy overnight. You don't talk about the great names in history because it was just one action and boom, they did a difference. They had to start with small individual initiatives. And that brought us to confront the biggest pandemic that South Africa lives today. COVID is almost over. We have cases here and there. The consequences of COVID will still stand for a few years, financially, socially, and mental health speaking. But what is the pandemic that has been afflicting this country, has been placing us on top of charts for our embarrassment, if not gender-based violence? So every year we hold this campaign in South Africa. Recently we had the President's Summit in Midrand to discuss what can be done so that we can bring this under control. And of course, we all wait for collective actions. But fact is, if we want to bring a change, if we want, as women, to tackle this problem, and don't say it's not really my problem, I'm waiting for the government, because we have been waiting for the government. We have been waiting for NGOs. We have been doing awareness campaign, and nothing much has changed. So we need to realize today, with the word legacy that's been striking in our minds, that we as individuals, as women in this society, who might have been through abuse or not, we need to do something. We need to start a legacy that we are going to leave for future generations to tackle this horrible pandemic of GBV and feminicide. How many children, how many women are being affected? And today, we made intentional that we are not going to read stats, because the stats keep on growing. However, our actions are not being motivated in a way that we can bring this to lower numbers, to control. You might think, what can I do? What can I do to change the situation? I'm one person. I'm a gogo. I'm a housewife. I am a mother, a sister. You know, gender-based violence has already stricken my family. Rape has already knocked at my door. What can I do? Today, we want to talk about small individual initiatives that you and I can start doing so that we leave a legacy to the future. We don't want our names in the tabloid. We don't want to be part of Wikipedia. But we wanted to live our days sure that we have made something that was within our reach to bring to control, or at least to instill values to this next generation, women and men alike. And of course, it starts with children, boys and girls. So we took upon us today to discuss this legacy we wanted to live on, knowing that if we wait for the collective action, it will not come as fast as we need. But our individual initiatives can bring a change today. So how we are going to define that? Giving you ideas, because we want you to come on board. We want you to participate not only of the 16 days. For us as Women in Action, we work hard during the 16 days. It's our platform, it's our opportunity. But throughout the year, we are tackling the consequences of gender-based violence, of rape, of abuse in this country. And sometimes we feel very powerless based on the cases that we received. However, if we start putting in practice some of these initiatives, I am sure this is going to change. So Nametsu, give me one beautiful initiative.
I think the one initiative that I'm thinking of, especially when you talk about how we should look away from the whole collective, because we're always, every time people talk about GBV, it's government this, NGOs that, and this group that group that. But what about me? Just one simple person in this world that has billions and billions of people. But we forget that we form that collective. And if my individual initiatives can make a difference, I will leave a good legacy for people. And when you talk about children, I was thinking about verbal reinforcements. You know how parents and educators, people who have access to children, how now, especially now in this country, corporal punishment is against the law. Hitting, spanking a child, you can actually go to jail for that.
But it has not been for a very long time.
And it hasn't been for a very long time, but we already see the consequences of it. Because it's supposed to be something that protects the children, but because there is now this vacuum between the corporal physical punishment and verbal penalties that you give to children to try to correct wrong behavior, people don't know how to do that. And because many parents, many educators lack that skill, they don't know how to reinforce for children properly. Instead, a child grows up being told, you're very naughty. You know, you're hard of hearing. You never listen to me. But what you're doing in that moment is attacking the child, not the behavior of the child. And what you're teaching them, because children are very impressionable, is that what my mother says I am is who I am. What my educator, with whom I spend the better part of my Monday to Friday, says I am, is who I am. Many times they'll even kick against what you're saying and refuse and not accept what you're saying, but it imprints in their mind. It's indelibly etched in the conscience of that child that he's a liar, she's devious, he doesn't listen, she's loose. Because you found her sitting with her group of friends who were boys. And you're like, you're very loose, you're not supposed to be here. You're a girl, why are you behaving like this? You're attacking the child, you're not attacking the behavior, you're not addressing the behavior. And because the reinforcements that are coming from this person of mature status compared to the child are so damaging, that's what they grow up with. They grow up lying, they grow up cheating, they grow up loose and devious. And then the same person turns around and says, "What did I do to you for you to treat me like this? You've brought the family name into disrepute. See the things that you've done," but that's the seed you planted. And now when the tree is grown and it has thorns on it and they're attacking you now, you have a problem with the behavior of your child when you instilled in them the idea that that's their behavior. So one thing that I believe we as individuals can do to set a very positive legacy is to check what we're saying to children. Because the women of 1956 that you spoke about, we're their children here. And what they did to help us is the reason we're here, or the reason we came to be the people we are, or the reason we had to change a lot of things in the people we were and have changed from. So the children of today are being formed by everybody's words. People like to say, "Oh, stop hitting that child, use your words." But what words are you using?
What kind of words?
Yeah, but what words are you using? Because if your words are damaging, that's the legacy you're leaving, because that's the child you're raising. But if your legacy is good, if you teach yourself to, yes, address bad behavior and learn to deal with the behavior decoupled from the child, then you will be able to make the child understand later on, even when they make mistakes and they fail, that I am not the failure. I took action that led to failure, but it can be addressed. Because when you change and you become that person whose verbal reinforcements are positive, the children that you're raising, the children that you're influencing now are going to remember the legacy that you left for them. And that legacy will be good. Because we're talking about legacy, but there are people who have left a very bad legacy. We know that. But we can choose to be people who set a good legacy, who leave a very good example. And we start that with how we teach children how to treat themselves and how to treat other people.
And I think it has been aggravated with freedom of speech. There were some words you would never say to a child. But now, lately, a teacher will not think twice about calling a child an idiot, a dumb person, a fool. So he's going to grow with that revolt inside, because his educator, his mother, will look at him and say, "You were the worst thing that happened in my life." What can you expect from a child that grows up being reinforced? He is the worst. He's going to act out of violence. He needs to bring outside all the confrontation, all the revolt he has inside. And this is why we see so many fights. We see bullying in school that now has escalated to killings in school, to violence against teachers, to violence against their own parents. We heard recently about a son under the influence of drugs who stabbed his mother 57 times. So all that revolt that was inside of him, not necessarily because of the mother, but the situation he was living in, he channeled against someone who was of high respect and love himself. So imagine now his mind in prison, knowing he killed his own mother, who would take care of him. But the revolt against what's going on in society, what's going on in their lives, is bottling in a way they have to push it out. And violence is increasing. Another initiative.
Another one is to make people aware that it is okay to leave or to separate from an abusive partner. Nowadays, we see how many people, how many women, they choose to remain in a relationship for the sake of culture, for finances, financial issues, maybe because the woman isn't working and the husband is working, but the husband is abusive. So he thinks that, you know what, I cannot start all over, because for me to leave this marriage, it means that I have to leave this house and I don't have a job. So what am I going to do? So the best thing is for me to stay in this relationship, is to stay in this marriage. And culture, because in South Africa, when a man pays lobola, it sort of like gives him rights over you, but even though they don't say it in those words, but it actually means that he has rights over you, he has rights over the children. And when a man pays lobola, it means that now the woman does not have the ability to go back home, because if she goes back home, the family now has to pay back the lobola that the groom's family paid for. So,
And that, just sorry to interrupt, I want to make clear. It does not come into consideration if he had been a good husband or maybe a very violent man.
so
Just to make clear, it's not that she's going home because she decided to separate. Even though if there is abuse, physical, aggression, violence, words, threats, life threats, she's been to hospital numerous times. If she decides to go back home, the family will not accept, because then they have to pay lobola back.
yes, and that's why they will advise her to stay somewhere else, but she cannot come back to be part of that family, because it's like now the surname is the surname of the groom. She's no longer part of that family. So a lot of women feel like it is okay, and they are afraid actually to leave because of those situations. And another excuse that they give is that my kids need their father around. So how can I separate my kids from their father? So they choose to stay in such relationships, thinking that the kids are protected, thinking that the kids don't see what's happening. Even if it is behind closed doors, the physical or the verbal abuse, kids can see, kids can sense if there is something wrong in the family. Even though the mother doesn't say, okay, guys, this is what's happening, kids can see. Nowadays, kids are very intelligent and they can pick up quickly that there's something wrong. However, when women choose to stay in such relationships, it gives the children the impression that it is okay to be in such relationships, because it has been proven that if a child grows up in a family that is full of abuse, it is most probably, it's going to happen, definitely happen, that the child will be in an abusive relationship. So the legacy that the mother can leave is by separating from the husband. It might not be divorce, but separating from the husband while helping the husband or encouraging the husband to get help, to get counseling, because he needs that counseling. Or if maybe the husband doesn't want to change, then maybe divorce might need to take place. However, that helps the child, because now she will be able to see the red flags. Like, it's okay for me to separate for my safety and for the safety of kids. It doesn't matter if I have to start all over again, but what is the legacy that I leave for those who are watching? It might not only be kids, it might be neighbors, it might be people in the community, because of the fear that they have to stay. When one leaves, it gives them the courage to say, you know what, if she was able to leave, then I can do the same. If she was able to start from scratch and now she has built this legacy and this life for her kids in a safe place, then I can do that. So I think it is very important that if the environment is not safe, that you remove yourself and your kids from that environment, and that is the legacy that you leave.
And I wanted to make a disclaimer here. Sometimes churches in general are accused of forcing women to stay in a relationship because you cannot divorce. That's not the fact. We pray, we work with the love therapy, with counseling couples and family, so that they find their way back to peace and marriage, with a blessed life and a healthy environment for the kids. But there are certain situations, there are certain instances that is almost impossible if that man, and here I need to open a parenthesis, there are women out there who are violent as well. So let me say, while that violent partner is not removed from the family, and seeks for counseling, seeks for help, seeks for professionals out there who will help him or her to center their mind in the right place. So as a church, we are always going to pray to fight for your marriage not to be destroyed. When it comes to the situation of putting your life and the life of your kids on the line, we will suggest that you really set apart. That's the reason of feminicide. It starts with abuse, it starts with harassment, it starts with physical violence until the man comes and kills. Not only the girlfriend, many times the wife and the children. And because he is not in his normal mindset, he even ends up committing suicide after. So we read this horrible news on the newspapers, and we don't realize that somehow that could be avoided. And here in your legacy, you're actually giving too. Don't stay. And as a family, as a supporting system, don't send that daughter away and say, fend for yourself. Have your arms opened, not for the sake of culture, but for the sake of love. Give support. Discuss this lobola. I doubt in court. If it's proven that there is abuse, violence, any court of law will demand that the family pays lobola back. So that's also a way to keep the woman enslaved in that situation, right? Another one.
Another legacy that we have is not to turning a blind eye. So I'm going to share a little bit of my personal experience, because when I was a child, I think I was 9 years old, and in a moment my stepfather was beating so much my
You
mom.
lived in a very violent environment.
And trying to escape and save my mother, I ran away to the streets to call the neighbors for help. They helped me of taking me out. No, come here home and let us have a tea, give me sweets. But in that moment, I didn't want only myself to be helped. I wanted them to do something. And in the moment
To call
of
the
trying,
police,
yes,
to
call
stop
the police, to
the
go
man.
there, to scream, to do something as adults. But in that moment, they told me, we cannot do anything because they are a couple and they are adults. They know what they are doing. And they turned their blind eye and they tried to calm me down. But it was not helping, because that was just a way that I tried. Okay, I'm screaming here alone. He's beating my mom, and now he's coming for me. Now I'm going out to ask for help, and they just turned their blind eye. And that happened so much. And it was not once, it was many times. On a moment of trying to seek for help, sharing sometimes with an auntie, with someone, they would always say, you know, we can't interfere in marriage of people. They know what they are doing, so just leave them alone. But you can come. Wherever you see they are fighting, so come to us and leave them that they will sort their problems out. And in that moment, the violence, the abuse took years until they decided to separate it. And then we had
Your
peace.
mother decided.
Yes, and we had peace as a child. When Tam was talking about it, we were not so upset when my stepfather decided to leave, because we knew we would go through a difficult moment. My mother was not working. We were just starting life from scratch. But then in that moment, we knew at least the three of us will hold together. And even if we need to share one loaf of bread, but he's not going to be here to mistreat us, to beat all of us. And that was one of the legacies that I keep with me, not to turn a blind eye. Doesn't matter if I don't know that person. Actually, because we are from God, we love each and every person. Doesn't matter if we know them, if they are part of our family or not, but we stretch our hands to help them, because we can't turn blind our eyes.
And it's very serious. we come across many circumstances where we see people not getting involved. Someone will take action. If you are seeing that abuse, you need to take action. We see kids with bruises. We see kids with cuts. We see kids with cigarette marks. And these kids, they go to school, they go to family houses, they have neighbors, and everyone thinks, it's not my problem. Everyone thinks someone will deal with that. Since it comes to our knowledge, now I am part of that problem. I ask you, Silmara, how many times it happened that he started beating your mom and you couldn't run to a neighbor because it was during the night?
Many times, and that would be part of the punches section.
Then he would come to you.
Yes, because no one, and we would scream, and now, neighborhoods, it's very close. But sometimes I remember one occasion, the neighbor next door, she took me from the walls, like, come here. She pulled me. And I was like, please help my mom. And said, no, I'll help you. Leave your mom there with him because it's her husband. She needs to deal with that. So
if she had helped, called the police, asked for intervention, all those additional nights of nightmares and terror would not have happened.
And as a child, you don't understand why, because as a child, you think all adults, they can protect you because it's the teacher, the neighbors, and they rebuke you when you do something wrong. So you say, this person knows better. And when I was trying to ask, please help me, no, just take here this sweet and, let us watch a cartoon. And I would say, no, I don't want, my mom needs help. And they'll just turn their blind eyes.
And I think the worst that we can mention, and I'm going to touch on the gray area now, it is when the mother sees there is abuse from her partner, from the father of that child. Boy and girl, don't think only girls go through abuse. Sitting on this side of the screen and receiving in these offices the cases we receive, there are many men out there who have been abused by the stepfather. Don't think it's only girls. And the mother sees and she puts a blind eye.
And when that happens? When the person starts talking to us, the pain you see in their eye from the betrayal of their mother is deeper than the abuse. Because yes, that person abused the girl or the boy, but the fact that he or she went to the mom to run to a place of solace, of help, of safety, and that person turned a blind eye, that kills your child far more than what they told you happened to them. So that's not the legacy a mother wants to leave to their child, for the child to always remember that I can't trust my mom. When I'm in trouble, I can't go to my mom. That is not the legacy we want to leave for our children.
That was the hardest for me at the time of the abuse, because when I came to talk to my mother, I was no longer a child going through that abuse. I spoke to her 5 years later. I was already an adult, an 18-year-old, so I didn't have reasons to lie. And she looked at me and saying, you are lying. And that was very painful. It was more painful than the abuse, because I held in secret all the time because of the threats. You're gonna kill your grandpa if you say your mother and this. So when I felt that I could speak and she needed to know what I had been through, and she looked at me and said, you were lying. It was like a knife. The pain of the abuse was nothing compared to the betrayal of my own mother. Now imagine a child that doesn't have where to go to, that looks at the mother as the one who is supposed to protect her, the aunt, the teacher in school, the CBC educator. We are not excusing ourselves of our responsibility. And I just say, it's not my problem. That's to turn, it's more than a blind eye. That is to turn against all the Christianity we read in the Bible. So a legacy it is to start doing something. Of course, you're not going to get involved in people's business and speak how they are going to raise their children, how they are going to conduct their marriage. That's not what we're talking about. But when there is a gross situation, you know, when you stay in a building and next door there is fight, and you see faces bruised, you see children running like Silmara, and you just say, it's not my problem. That's not a legacy that we want to leave for the next generation. We need to take, in this case, matters in our hands and try to help somehow. Try to guide this woman to an NPO, to a shelter, to look for help, to call the police, to count on family courts so that they find the help they need to get out of that violent situation. Because it will escalate. It starts with verbal abuse. It starts with physical, and it has been ending in feminicide. Just check on the stats that we intentionally didn't bring to the show today. Because everyone knows we are number one in rape. We are number
In the
one
whole world.
in the whole world.
Imagine.
We're not talking about Africa. We're talking about the whole world. Johannesburg, it's so violent that has stopped up Mexico. South Africa has stopped up Mexico in criminality. And whenever there is robbery, house invasion, it follows by physical violence and rape. So we cannot detach crime from rape and abuse. That's the fact.
Another thing that I think we could add to the initiatives that each and every one of us can actually take on is how, I know in South Africa or Africa at large, we like to say it takes a village to raise a child. And us as the village means the parents, mother, father, the grannies, the grandpas, the aunts and uncles, anyone involved, even the teachers involved in the raising of that child. So these initiatives are actually that we're mentioning today, they are for each and every one of us, not just for the parents because it's so-and-so's child. It means that mother and father, the ones who are responsible alone. It's all of us because we are part of that child's life. We have influence in that child's life. And when you were giving a comment about, turning a blind eye, I was thinking that usually when people turn a blind eye, they think that it's from next door. It's that family that's dealing with it. It's not going to affect me. But they forget that even their own children can hear what is happening next door. And they are watching their behavior. That as much as that mother who might not be, or the partner who might not be leaving that abusive situation, might be sending a message to their children that it's okay to accept that kind of abuse. You also, as the neighbor who is hearing this, and your children are hearing what's happening next door, and you are doing nothing about it, you are giving an impression to your kids. It's a legacy that you are setting for your own children, that when they are in trouble and they need help, no one else is going to be there for them. The same way that you were not there for that family. So it's something that came to my mind when you were giving a comment about hearing what is happening next door, that there's abuse. We know these things. But also going to the show that we had in the past where we were speaking to our brothers, we mentioned how it's very important to stop raising boys and girls in a different way, where we have rules for boys and we have rules for girls. Because sometimes I think we forget that the victims of abuse, the perpetrators of abuse, they were also once children. They were boys and girls. They were not born as abusers. Mm-hmm. They were raised in families within communities, and they saw what was happening in their families and in their communities, as it has already been mentioned. And that's how they picked up certain behaviors and ways of dealing with problems, either with violence, with anger, having outbursts of wrath. So it's very important that us as the village around those children, we teach them the right way. Boys need this thing of, boys will be boys. A boy hit a girl. Why were you doing with boys? You know that boys are going to hit you. So we are saying to these kids that we should expect.
It's okay.
Yes, we should expect boys who become men to hit us. We're saying to these boys that they should expect that as boys, this is how they behave. So it's very important, just as a continuation from that show, to say, let's be very careful to teach boys. And even today, as you mentioned, men are also being abused. So it's not okay. This thing of saying to boys, don't hit girls, But it's okay for when a girl hits a boy, you're like, oh, you are a fool. Why are you crying because a girl hit you? Now we teach boys all the time not to perpetrate abuse. No, you should not lay a hand on a woman. But we don't tell girls not to lay hands on men. And that's why today we hear many men who may not come out, publicly, but they do send messages, they do ask for help, but saying that, my woman is hitting me. Even on social media, we see women attacking men. And we know that if that man can retaliate, he's going to go to jail, but nothing happens to that young woman who's actually provoking him and hitting him and doing all of those things. So these initiatives are for us. All of us are part of that village. It may not be your biological child, but you are an aunt, you are a grandmother, you are a neighbor. You have a responsibility to teach that, leave a legacy. They may not say anything to you today, but they may know that, so-and-so's mother, whenever I went to her, she was able to help me. If the neighbors had helped Silmara at that time, she would always remember that it was that particular neighbor who put a stop to what was happening in my home. But because they didn't do it, they were the village that was supposed to raise her. They didn't do anything. And now, it left a bad legacy to her as a child that other things could be avoided. So it's very important for all of us to do our part and teach both girls and boys it is never okay to lay a hand on someone, to treat someone in a manner that you would not like to be treated.
And many parents, mothers and fathers, they sort of reword aggressive behaviors from the boys. So they are telling the boys that to be a boy, it's to be aggressive, to be rough, to be violent. If, for instance, the boy arrives home with his backpack and with the books and he throws on the floor, it's okay. If it's the girl, the mother will say, don't do that, it's not proper for you. But why it's not proper also for the boy not to throw, like roughly? Because it seems very small, but it's an endorsement of a behavior that today he's throwing his backpack on the floor, tomorrow he's going to turn the chair, next he's going to be slapping someone on the face that can even be his own mother. So do not reword those kinds of behaviors for boys and for girls. It's not okay. They grow up thinking that they can do it and it's okay.
I think another legacy that we can leave behind is encouraging victims to actually speak up, tell their story, and be heard and believed, because we have a culture whereby in communities, as soon as someone speaks up and says, this is what I went through, or so-and-so did this to me, then the questions come, but what were you doing there? Why did you date him? Why were you wearing what you were wearing? But didn't you see what time it was? Why did you agree to date him if you saw the signs and all of those things?
We call it the blame game.
Yes, it's the blame game. And instead of looking at the perpetrator and saying, wait, this person has been violated and they need help, society has gotten to a phase and a stage whereby they start blaming the victim and asking them, what did you do? And I'm thinking of in a setting where I've seen many times where when a woman is abused by her spouse or kids are being abused, the question is going to be, but what did you do to him to be upset? But hang on, like she didn't grab his hands and say, hit me or whatever. They came and they decided that that person is going to be an outlet. And when people see it, we even see it in workforces sometimes. They can see that that woman is being violated by the manager or something. They'll be like, oh no, but she has loose tendencies. The way she dresses, the way she passes when she passes in front of him. Of course, what did she expect was going to happen? But then they don't realize by saying that you're actually victimizing that person even more than what the perpetrator is doing, because nothing hurts more than people not believing what that person is saying. And it often happens with the closest people, because when they first want to disclose it, they will disclose it to the people that they trust, as Seal said, when she was running out to the neighbors' houses, because she believed that that person is credible, they will help them. Now, if the same person that I trust in and I believe will hear me out asks me, but what did you do? Or what did you say? or maybe you looked at him in the wrong way. We see it in co-parenting.
You offered yourself.
Yes, we see it in co-parenting situations. No, be nicer to your stepfather. Maybe he won't hit you. But wait, what is that child doing that's going to aggravate that person so much that they want to let that child be their outlet? But because people don't want to be aware of the truth, accept that that's happening, they choose to turn a blind eye and say, oh no, but he's a good person. Maybe you said something. Maybe you did something. Maybe what you wore was too revealing. It was too short. Or maybe what you said. And we often hear them asking nowadays, what signs were you sending out to the person? And you stop and ask yourself, but who's going to be in their conscious mind, in a normal state, send out a message that's going to bring any sort of violation to the person? No one wants to do that. And people actually do that sometimes even unintentionally. You might not blame the victim, but when the person's trying to bring it out, maybe in a casual setting, like, oh, I found out that maybe I'm sick or something, then immediately people will be like, maybe, or they'll pose a question. Like, I remember when I was going through what I went through, how I first brought it out to my mom. I said, hypothetically speaking, let's say this was happening to a friend. What would you do? Her reaction assured me that something would be done about it. But sometimes when people speak, the way
when they
we
test
say
the
it,
waters,
yes,
the
that's-
waters flood over them.
Yes, and when they test the water, then the person will be like, no, but nowadays people don't know how to carry themselves off properly. Then afterwards they'll be crying wolf that, oh, this happened to me, that happened to me. And sadly enough, that even gives perpetrators power to continue the abuse that they're doing, because they know that society is so twisted that the victim is always the one that is at fault, that even in workforces, we see women getting fired at their jobs. Not because she didn't go through that violation, but she did. But the other women that heard it, that witnessed it, and sometimes, sadly enough, that went through it, are the first ones to say, it was your fault. So if I went through it, so it's okay. Tammy as well can go through it. She can hold it. If I'm okay, it's okay. But it should be the other way around, whereby we support that person, let them know it's okay. And because, as we spoke on statistics, we spoke about it lengthy even in the past programs.
Yes.
Sometimes justice might not be served in the manner that everybody's expecting, but having that support system, being heard, being believed, and having people around you that say, we know, we understand, we heard, we saw, is comforting for that person, and they're able to move on. Because nowadays, the first people, when you walk out of your community, you're not known as Precious. It's Precious that was raped by so-and-so because
Yes.
Precious wore this and Precious was there. Precious is that girl that was abused by her husband, or she returned from her marriage, and in Tswana they call them lefetwa. Like, no man wants her anymore because,
Look at the names.
yes, like lefetwa, or no, she's defeated. Other women, you're not the only one that's been abused. Like, come on, toughen up, girl. Stay there. You knew what you were doing. Hold the knife with the sharp edge. But it's not for that person. If they don't want to do it, you have no right.
Actually, it's not for any person.
Yes, it's not. And some, because of not being believed and victims being blamed, they end up thinking, no, just hold on. Like, hold on. Like, something will happen, he might die. And that's why today we find women incarcerated, because she couldn't handle it anymore. And because nobody believed her and they blamed her, she ends up taking matters into her own hands, to an extent where now the family does not lose the perpetrator dying, but they lose their loved one as well, because they have to be incarcerated because of the crime that they now had to resort to, trying to protect not only themselves, but maybe a friend or a family member.
And we are speaking out of experience, because we visit often, not lately on account of pandemic, but we hold our work in some of the prisons, should I say, correctional services and police stations, and it's common to find women there, to find children who couldn't see anymore the abuse towards the mother, and that young boy, that young girl, got a knife and stabbed the partner of the mother to deliver the mother from that suffering. Now the mother doesn't have the partner. She is no longer under abuse, but she has to visit her young child in prison, who will probably be sentenced because that child didn't have psychological structure to see violence. That woman could no longer be the punching bag and being humiliated in front of her kids. We are not justifying crime, but we are just bringing to our discussion that sometimes the pain is so unbearable that under pressure, people resort to wrong decisions. It could have been avoided. And this is the legacy we want to invite you to start today. Because being more present, not turning a blind eye, not calling your children, neighbors, others, with vile language that will put them down, we might avoid a worse situation tomorrow. We are going to have a break right now because I know the conversation is intense, and normally our programs for the 25th of November are always intense. The situation is intense. We cannot here put rose, though it's pink, but we cannot put roses all around and pretend it's not happening. And just after our break, I want to bring one more individual initiative. Actually, this is a group initiative that you can start being part of today and help others and leave a legacy. We are going to be right back.
Voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know.
Ooh, you say I am loved, but I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong, when I think I am weak. You say I am held, but I am falling short when I don't belong. Oh, you say I
every failure, God, you have every victory.
You say I am loved, but I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong, but I think I am weak. You say I am held, but I am falling short when I don't belong. Oh, you say I am yours, and I believe. Yes, I believe what you say of me. I believe, and I believe. Oh, I believe what you say of me. I believe.
Welcome back. Normally we say welcome back to the second segment, the second part of the show. But speaking about this situation, it really brings us to such a state that we're calling it the second round of discussion, of course. We're not beating anyone at all. And I wanted to talk to you about an individual initiative that turned into a group initiative. Most of you know my testimony of abuse, of rape and domestic violence with my then boyfriend. And for many, many years, I held silence because I didn't have anyone to talk to. And as I mentioned, when in a verbal disagreement with my mother, I brought about the abuse, she said that I was lying. So in the back of my mind, I had to keep as a secret, concealed, because no one would believe. People would judge me, would say A, B, C, and D, that I was trying to cover up for my relationship with this boyfriend. In talking to him to seek for some comfort, to some guideline, it gave him permission to now abuse me. So I experienced sexual abuse from someone who was very close, my uncle. I experienced betrayal of having my mother not believing in me. And when I found comfort in a partner, in a boyfriend that was supposed to help me, he manipulated of my weaknesses to now become aggressive with words, physically, and he nearly killed me. So you see that by not having where to go to and feeling ashamed, trying to deal with the side effects of all that I had been through, because of course it changed my personality, it changed my nature, it changed the way that I was dressing, it changed the way I related to people. It was when I also became people's pleaser. And not having a platform that I would feel safe, that I would feel not judged, I held it for many, many years. And in those days, it was not common for a woman to come out and say what happened. It was not proper. When the society cannot handle a situation, they advise you, keep quiet, because then they are not part of your problem and they don't have the responsibility to deal or to help with your problem. This is what I did for many, many years. And getting married, my husband being, I say, the greatest psychologist that I ever had, besides God, then he encouraged me to speak. And I started speaking about that experience in smaller groups. I started speaking with friends, colleagues, pastors' wives. And because of exposing myself and talking about all that I had overcome, the insecurities, the failures, little by little, more cases were popping. Then I started speaking, giving counseling for women. And that was the legacy that I started by then. of using of my experience and the greatness of God who had healed me, and I didn't have a platform to speak, I now started investing in creating a channel, an opportunity, a place for women to come, not afraid of being judged, not afraid of exposing herself, but also being able to ask for help. So it started as an initiative of my own. In the churches where my husband was working, here and there, a few cases, God was bringing to me to counsel that women. And that was how Women in Action started. So from an individual initiative, now it's an initiative of a group of more than 120 pastors' wives who are fully trained with trauma counseling. We serve in shelters. Some of them here, they do VODs, Victim Offenders Dialogue. Boitumelo Nametsu, Mohad in Soweto, Impo, Tokozili, many others that you know, friends of us, we use of our experience. Some never been to abuse. Others had been to abuse. But we all physically, literally dressed our T-shirts and we got together because we don't want our names in a billboard. We don't want to receive trophies of honor. That's not our goal. But our goal is that women like us, like Silmara, who came out of trauma, like you who were nearly molested, and other experiences that we all had, we want to share that it's possible to heal and to conquer a new life. That is the work that we as Women in Action do year after year, and we always aim to do better for the following year. So we are starting today, exactly today, Friday, 25th, the 16 days, how we are going to work. What it was an individual initiative became a group initiative, and now it's going far beyond to the work in our churches. Because during the 16 days, we are going to be available for counseling, we are going to be on the streets evangelizing, and we are going to have a series of meetings for women. Women who have been abused, women who are undergoing abuse, women who have traumas in the past because maybe they grew up in a place where there was lots of violence and abuse. Maybe they lived in hostels, they lived in shelters, they lived in places where their own brothers were very abusive towards them. We are going to make meetings with these women. We don't want to expose, but we want it to be available. Our first meeting, it is Sunday now, 2:00 p.m. from Park Station. We are going to do it from Park Station and in few other branches. The wives who are skilled, who are trained, they will hold the meeting there so that we give that platform, that opportunity for women who are in abuse to come and feel safe and join us. We try the best we can to pair with NGOs, NPOs. We have referrals to authorities. We try to protect the rights of children. We try our utmost to help those who are currently in abuse. And we also, that is the most important point, only to remove one from abuse, to go to the avenues of the law. It's a great step forward. But how about healing? How about inner healing? How about rehabilitating this young girl, this young boy, this woman into a new relationship, to believe in marriage, to believe in family, not to bring the scars of the past into her new life? This is what we aim to do. And this year, I'm going to already break the news. This year, we are going to have a bonus, because it's very difficult to confront the perpetrator. It's very hard sometimes to let go our sentiments to the perpetrators. We get very delicate cases. We get very absurd, horrific cases. But fact is, the perpetrator needs help. The perpetrator needs rehabilitation. So my husband, in one of these opportunities, which date we are going to make available as well, he is going to hold a meeting only for men, for anger management, for those who had been brought up in a very violent environment. So more than often, they feel like they have to solve the situation with their strength, their physical strength. So this meeting will be channeled for men who have gone through abuse, who feel that they are at the verge of becoming an abuser themselves, who are violent. And believe me, they don't want to continue being who they are, but they don't know how to deal. They also need help. So for the first time, along these many years we work for the 16 days, we are going to create the opportunity for men to come and participate of this meeting without being judged, without being labeled, understanding that you, as a perpetrator, also needs help. So this is set to happen, and this is how we are starting to leave our legacy. We don't want our names in books, in the Hall of Fames, in galleries, but we want to reach to you who needs this help. Our glory is to know that you will conquer a new life. It might not be for you, but don't put a blind eye. There must be someone in your circle, in your community, family, school, work, church, that you know, and you can encourage her. Start practicing creating this legacy and bring her to receive counseling, to receive a prayer. Let us give hands. What starts as an individual initiative may become a group. And I am sure if we start practicing this so much more, we will, to a certain extent, reduce the effects of GBV and feminicide in this country. And when I look at the Bible, our Lord Jesus Christ was the one who left for us the greatest legacy. When I'm talking about us, I'm talking about women, because he is the first one registered in the Bible that extended some recognition to women. He was also the one, when they were trying to stone a woman for adultery, he was the one who defended her. He did not point his fingers and said, you are an adulterous woman, what an evil doing, you are vicious, you are this. He just looked at her and said, go and sin no more, do it no more. So for us today, looking at the legacy of Jesus, we are going to find one very important element that needs to be present in our legacy, and that's called compassion. We are going to read Matthew 9:35-36. He says, then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. Because of compassion, he did not only preach it, but he took action. He went to people. He went to look for those who were sick, those who were desperate, those who were evil possessed, those who didn't see hope in life anymore. And then it continues in verse 36. But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them, because they were weary and scattered like sheep having no shepherd. When we look at this pandemic of gender-based violence, we can criticize, we can give ideas, we can point fingers, but we are only able to leave a legacy to change this situation if we have compassion. And compassion makes us to see the need of people, the need of victims, the need of perpetrators, to know that we hold the secret to a new life through Jesus Christ. And we need to put in action. You see that Jesus, looking at the suffering of the people, at the desperation of the people, he felt compassion and he acted. So a legacy starts with a series of actions. He is the one who left for us the greatest legacy of all, for us women. And today, he's leading us to think about, what can I do when I am compassionate with the suffering of many women, many children, and men out there who don't know how to rebuild their lives after abuse, after violence, after domestic violence, after the injustices of life. He went from village to village, from town to town, from synagogue to synagogue. And we should do the same. Instead of putting a blind eye, we need to be that helping hand who will bring those to know the truth in Jesus Christ. Compassion and action is the legacy that we want to give you today. Nami, would you pray for us for these next 16 days, for those who are there and need courage to come forward, for the perpetrators, for those who have been up to today saying, it's not my business, and they will start a legacy of their own.
Our Father in heaven, in the name of our Lord Jesus, Father, I thank you so much for this program, because today I know you reached many people who didn't know that there is a safe space to go to talk, to offload, to just speak without being judged, without being ridiculed. And it is in this place that we are inviting people to come to, the Women in Action, because we've been there. And because you have helped us and you gave us inner healing from all the traumas, all the pain, all the experiences of the past that were supposed to destroy us, but didn't. You gave us a new life and we are ready to give it with compassion to others. So I pray for them. There are many of them who don't even have the strength to reach out. And this program is us reaching out to them, telling them we're here, because you have given us this gift that we are giving forward. I pray for those who are in very bad circumstances in their marriages, in their relationships. They feel trapped. Children who are observing things that are going wrong in their family, who feel helpless. Come to their aid. Help this man who sees himself abusing and violating and destroying the lives of the people that he knows he loves, but he doesn't know how to come out of it. You are God. Now we're reaching out to him too, to look for help, so that he can come out of this cycle of abuse. Maybe he was abused and doesn't know any other way of living with people and interacting with them, but instead abuses them as well. So help him. Help this woman who is so violent and she doesn't understand why. And she wants to come out of that because all her relationships go bad. We pray for all these people right now for you to help them. And that is why we ask you, come to give healing to those who are asking for help. Maybe we have a woman or a boy who has been abused and is crying tears because of this program that showed him why he has become the person he is, why she has become this woman who is so hateful, so full of rage. But you've also said something, that you have compassion on them. And this is the compassion you had on us. And this is the compassion you're extending to everyone who is in trouble, who is sick because of the traumas, who is sick in their soul and tormented and needs help. Let this hand that you are extending to them by this prayer and by the work of the Women in Action reach everyone who needs help. We surrender this work into your hands, even as we surrender their lives to you. And we thank you that you had the compassion on us that is overflowing onto people who will now know what it is to know and to receive the love of Jesus Christ. We thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Normally, by the end of the show, we tell you what we're going to say next week. Not today. Today, we are starting the 16 days. So we are going to make available our invitation for this meeting on the 27th at 2 p.m. from Park Station, so that through social media you can tag people that you believe will benefit from this meeting. We're also sharing with you our contacts, email address, Instagram, Facebook, our helpline numbers, so that you can have something in your hands to make a decision to call for help. Or maybe to make use of these numbers, to make use of the invitation to extend, to tag someone else. But let us start our legacy as individuals, and that will become a great collective. God bless you all. Until next week. And if you don't know anyone, if you haven't been through abuse, your prayers are powerful. Because everything that we do, it's more than physical, it's spiritual. And you are going to support us in prayer to reach as many as we can. God bless you. Until next week, bye-bye.
Look, I hear what you're saying. You've been through so much pain and suffering. I know you'll make it, and you'll be great. I see you, ne? Plus, you've got my full support.
Wow, guys, I put all my hard work and dedication to this video. Don't forget to follow and like this video because that will increase my popularity and fame. Did they really see my hard work? Did I even go up to their standards? I didn't even reach 400 comments on this video. Wow, ladies, it's incredible how one statement can completely change over time. What was once genuine is now nothing but flattery. So where to from here?
Join us this Friday at 3 p.m.